Welcome to Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman, a podcast celebrating unconventional choices and asking curious questions through the lens of a happy, child-free life. Every week, I chat with experts on today's most interesting topics, inspiring us to think differently, live intentionally, and find fulfillment on our terms. Whether you're child-free or seeking a space where parenthood isn't part of the conversation, you are welcome here. It's not about comparison, it's about possibility. Let's get curious together. What if the success, wealth, and fulfillment we crave isn't coming to us, no matter how hard we are working, because we aren't actually ready to hold that success yet? I am somewhere in the middle on the scale of woo, but I do believe that our inward expansion is a critical ingredient in getting the external stuff that we want. And that led me to today's guest, Olivia Marie. Olivia is a doctor with a degree in psychology and an expert in nervous system regulation. She helps high level entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and creatives unlock new levels of success, not by pushing harder, which is the key ingredient here, but by rewiring their nervous systems to hold more ease, more wealth, more love, more joy, so we can be rich and regulated in every facet of our life. Welcome, Olivia.
Wow, thank you. That was such a wonderful intro. I'm so excited to be here to talk with you and to share all the things.
I am thrilled to have you. So let's dive into it. I hear the phrase nervous system regulation or like nervous system stimulation. I feel like these are floating around in the culture a little bit, but I don't think most of us know what it means. So, can you just start by explaining what is our nervous system?
Your nervous system runs throughout your entire body. So from the top of your head down to the toes, right? We have a brain, we have a spinal cord, we've got nerves that come off, like we're all familiar with that. But your nervous system is really the most primal part of you. It is the part through which you run everything through, which is why it's so important because that's the part that is going to override anything. It's going to override any kind of creative thinking. It's going to override even digestion. It can override everything because it's how your body is wired to behave and interact with the environment. Right. So it's that part that if you were to see a snake or a lion in the wild, it would signal danger. It's that part that says, this is relaxing. We have nothing to worry about. So think about it like its first entry point to how you view, perceive, and interact with the world that then governs everything else you think, but also how your body responds, how your mind responds. And as a downstream effect, the actions you do or do not take.
Okay, that's helpful. So, it's almost like the thing that is triggered first is the nervous system. And then, however it responds, it triggers, it's like a domino effect of all the other systems in our body. Is that right?
Exactly. Like anything you smell, see, taste, touch, right? We're always consuming information, what we can see online, like all of that. It's like that first filter, that first barrier that tells us whether to react, to respond, whether we're safe, whether we're not safe. Like everything kind of just goes through first that like nervous system filter and it tells everything how to respond. It tells your heart to beat, it tells your stomach to pump, it tells everything. It tells your bowels to a bathroom. Like it's the fundamental core thing that runs everything in your life.
Okay. This is so eye-opening to me already because it's crazy, like, just some things you mentioned there, right? Like digestion, heartbeat, maybe even sweating. I don't know, like, let alone like overthinking and anxiety and overwhelm, the mental feelings that we experience. When those things happen, I feel like we get really granular just to that thing, like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious. Like, I never think of it in connection to an overall system that is responding to something and then causing those symptoms.
Well, that's why, right? If you're anxious or you're scared, your heart rate increases. Your palms get sweaty. You're not sitting there being like telling your heart to increase. No, it's a natural byproduct because your nervous system is perceiving we have something to be nervous about or anxious about. So it has that like downstream effects. And you can even see like symptom wise, oh yeah, when I'm anxious, it does this. When I'm sad, like it causes tear ducts to swell and tears come out. Like, oh, I can see how my nervous system perceives something, my palms, my chest, that pit in my stomach, right? Even we think about nervous system and that intuition or that gut feeling. It's also your nervous system, right? That's also why sometimes when you're really scared, you have to go to the bathroom, right? There's so many like physical things. And I think sometimes people think of nervous system it's energetic or maybe too woo, but it's like, no, it's a physical reaction in your body.
Amazing. Okay. I'm thinking of all the things that I do, like how I react. Like you said, yeah, when you're scared, you have to go to the bathroom. When I'm super anxious, I can't go to the bathroom. It's like something.
Like clenching up, right? Like everything just clenches in your body. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the whole crux of this conversation is really about understanding this and then using this understanding to our advantage, right? So that we can kind of break through things, rewire, and get what we want. But can you tell us big picture? Like when I hear that things are a biological system within our body or a biological response, my next question is, well, how much control do we have over that, right? Like if I get scared or something makes me nervous or, we're talking about all the negative stuff, but I guess also if something makes me really excited, like, can I do anything about the way my nervous system responds?
So my answer is twofold. Like you have zero control in the sense that your nervous system is primal. So it's going to kick in even if your rational mind or you're consciously trying to say, you have nothing to be scared of. You have nothing to be scared of. Think about it like a little kid or when we were younger. Maybe you were scared of the dark. And you could tell yourself, like, there's no monsters, there's no monsters. But if you believe and your nervous system is already saying, no, there's something to be scared of, consciously, it doesn't matter how many times you throw spaghetti at that, it's not going to stick. It's not going to believe it. So from that aspect, you don't have control. The control comes from rewiring, and this is where rewiring comes in, how your nervous system perceives it, right? So it wouldn't be trying to get it to shut down that the dark isn't scary. It would be rewiring the fact that your nervous system believes the dark is scary. Does that make sense? Like the
Mhm.
difference between the control. That's why I always say when people try to just consciously not get triggered by something, like you can't just tell your mind, like, don't be triggered or like calm down or relax. Have you ever tried to tell someone who's triggered to just calm down? It's like, you can't. It's a primal response based on what the nervous system believes, which is why the only option in order to rewire that is to change how your nervous system is perceiving the world around you.
Yeah, the thing that comes to my mind is speaking, right? Or getting on a stage. Like, I love speaking and it's something that I want to continue to get better at, but I inevitably have some of these symptoms, right? Like sweaty palms, dry mouth. And no matter how many times I say, like, this isn't scary, you volunteered for this, like, just don't do that. Like, that's not working, right? Just me consciously telling my mouth, be better is not solving any problems. So, can you walk us through kind of in depth? And I want to talk about like your specific programs too, and also like how this actually helps us in the tactical stuff we want in our lives. But can you start by walking us through when you say rewire, what does that mean? How does that work?
So think about your nervous system like an operating system, like an iOS operating system. So there's like wires, like tracks that signal, okay, control C, like control copy will elicit that function. So when we talk about rewiring, instead of control C, meaning danger, or you would get triggered, we rewire control C or the copy function to actually be print or to be paste. So to be something completely different. So think about your system has millions and millions of tracks and neurons and synapses, all with different functions running through them, right? Different operating functions. When you change the ones that are currently making you triggered or are currently problematic, then you are able to elicit a different response. So that's why I said it's really like an wiring, really like an iOS upgrade, an iOS reset, because you're just really changing those functions in there of those neurons. Now, I also like to explain with rewiring, think about it also because so much has been rewired into your system throughout your life. Like it's probably been rewired not once, but you've wired that belief or that response in perhaps hundreds, if not thousands of times. So it's a rewiring and an undoing of all of that.
How do you do it? Like, how do you switch? It's almost like I'm picturing like a switchboard, like an old school where like this used to cause this. Now let's like literally move the wire to this different experience. But how?
Yeah, I have my rapid rewire technique, but the biggest thing is you have to get to the root. And so what I notice often is people try to maybe affirm their way to rewiring or to simply state something that they would like to be true that they don't believe, but you have to get down to the root experience, the primary first thing that wired that in the first place. And chances are it's going to come from something that happened when you were younger, usually under 7 years old. That's when your mind is like a sponge. It picks up everything because it doesn't know what's true and what's not. So anything that's programmed into you from parents, society, and your experiences, you take on, and that becomes the blueprint of your nervous system. You're like, oh, this is how it works. Let me inject this command. And then you just end up going through your adult life under that operating system. If you don't change it, just like if you don't upgrade your phone, you'll continue operating with outdated software. Same type of thing. But you have to get to that root experience. And until you get to that root, that first one, it's not going to fully stick. And this is where I see people get trapped in having to manage their nervous system. And perhaps this is something we can also get into, because I don't believe in actually having to manage your nervous system. Because when you get to the root and you remove it, we don't need to spend 3 hours in the morning, dunking our face in ice water, doing an hour of breath work, doing all these things. It's like, well, why are we even dysregulated in the first place? Let's just solve that problem. And then if you want to do things for your own wellness or benefit or expansion, yes, but not because you need that in order to feel fine. But it really requires that root. Like, what was that first one experience, event, something someone said to you that you took on? You eliminate that, and it's like this beautiful domino ripple effect where then you no longer react to it anymore because you changed that perception in the brain of that one event.
I love the root cause approach versus just a lifetime of maintenance because that is overwhelming in itself, right? And also, just sometimes it doesn't feel realistic, like the things you described, having a 3 hour morning routine to really set your day up right. Not many of us can do that every single day. Even those of us child free, like our mornings do not look like that. Or I'll think sometimes, like, oh, I should give myself a certain amount of space before I jump on and do this and do a podcast recording because I want to make sure I'm calm and present and things related to the nervous system. But sometimes you have a call that goes over or whatever. Like, I love the idea of getting to the source and solving it there. Not that there are no tactics and techniques that are helpful beyond that, but I think like that's the missing piece for a lot of people. We can learn how to meditate, we can learn how to do breath work, but if we're not getting at that root thing that's personal to us,
Yeah.
then you're doing that all the time.
Exactly. And like I said, those things are great. I don't have a problem with those things. It's just that I guarantee you do a couple of those things, but then when something comes up, you still get triggered. All right, I'm triggered again. Got to go back. Let's put my face in ice water. Let's do some breath work. All right, get triggered again and do it again. And I'm like, this sounds like an exhausting cycle of constantly having to still be triggered and then bring yourself back. And, we talked about your nervous system. You basically operate in what is called a window of tolerance, right? So the window of tolerance is you don't want to be above where you're hyper, right? And you don't want to be below where you're hypo, where your nervous system crashes. And that's where we get things like chronic fatigue and exhaustion. Why not just exist in this window of tolerance versus having to get dysregulated? I need to pull all these tools out of my toolkit, normal again. All right, get dysregulated. Like that up and down is also just exhausting for your system, which is why I'm so passionate about like get to the root, like yank the full weed out. Don't just cut the weed at the top so the weed doesn't grow back. You don't get triggered again. It's like, oh, we can now move on with our lives and have like impact and do what we want to do and just live life and have joy and have all the deliciousness and everything. To me also experiences differently when you're more regulated. Food tastes differently. The way you show up is different. Like, there's that trend with reels. I think there's like a bird calling of like, oh, this is my mind, on this. It's like, yeah, when you're regulated, your mind isn't going 50 times a minute. So it just really just changes your experience of life also when you get down to that root.
How do we know if we are in that proper zone of tolerance or like what is normal, right? Like if somebody is listening and they're like, well, I have been really tired for like 6 months, like, am I below? Am I in chronic fatigue? Or like, yeah, I do feel like I'm overwhelmed and sinking a million miles a minute, a huge portion of my days. Like, does that mean I'm above the zone? How do we know if we're dysregulated? What does that look and feel like?
I mean, you basically touched on the high points of that when you just said it, but notice how exhausted, but also notice how reactive you are. Notice if you're irritable, if you're, I know this is child free, but if you're maybe quick to yell at your partner, whether small tasks feel overwhelming to you, like just, I don't know, maybe it's just doing the laundry or going for a walk feels overwhelming or answering an email feels overwhelming. Or it just feels like you need to zone out, right? You need to disassociate. You need to numb out at the end of the day by just zoning out on Netflix. And that's what you do every night is just like you numb out. Maybe you also need a glass of wine and that's all you do because you need to quote unquote decompress. It can be up where you're like having trouble sleeping, also where you're not waking up rested, where you're kind of in the high state, but also the low in terms of numb out, disconnection, disassociated, not really any kind of energy, always feeling kind of flat. And then the little overwhelms, right? So crying over spilt milk. It's like something small happens, like you drop something and you either panic, right? And it's where you get panic attacks, anxiety, or like you're crying because of the milk spilt and what's going to happen? Oh my God. It kind of gets to you a bit more. So you'll kind of notice these little ways that things are getting to you and you're living in that reactive state. And you'll probably feel it somatically in your body, right? You feel the rush through your nervous system. You feel the pit in your stomach. You feel the heart rate increase. You're living maybe also with worry, right? You always feel on edge, like you're walking on eggshells or you're waiting for a shoe to drop, or you're very hyper aware of how people are going to react to you. What is Susie going to think? How is Karen going to respond? It's like you're tiptoeing to make sure you don't make anyone upset or make anyone angry, right? You're a people pleaser. Honestly, there's so many things that I could go on about, but it's normally these little, and I'm using quotations, little behaviors that people don't really realize because it's been normal in their life and they don't know anything different because normally you've been living in dysregulation so long that that is your quote unquote normal. Actually, I want to add one more in. You have trouble being.
What does that mean?
You can't just sit to sit and be. You have to be walking and listening to a podcast, or you also have to be scrolling your phone or checking emails or doing something productive. Like, can you sit and just look out the window and just be with your thoughts? Or can you go for a walk just to go for a walk and not also have a podcast on and this on to always be learning? Or it's the inability to slow down because your nervous system is so used to the chaos that when you slow down, you actually don't feel safe. You're like, oh my God, this is actually too overwhelming to sit and be. You need some kind of stimulation because the stimulation is actually addictive for you at that point.
I feel convicted. Okay, I will say I'm in a slightly better place with this, but there was an era of my life, like friends who listen to this are going to be like, that was you. Like there was an era where seriously, I could not, like the thought of just sitting, what you said, just being, it doesn't matter if we're at like an event, a party, if we're just like sitting and relaxing or spa time. Like I could not stand being in a spa because it was so much just sitting with no plan, no devices, no nothing. And I just could not handle it. Like I needed to walk and get steps. I needed to go like get something done, start a conversation with somebody. Like I could not just be content in stillness. And I'm still working on it because I think part of the problem, like whether we call it hustle culture or whatever, like the productivity hamster wheel, I feel like we've been conditioned that we need to be doing so much. So it's not like I want to be, intellectually, I don't want to be doing 25 things in the amount of time where really I could get 15 things done comfortably. But I have a belief within me that being more productive is better. If I want to make progress, if I want to make more money, if I want to be more visible, if I want to have more friends, like whether it's professional or personal, it's like more is more is more. It feels like that's been the rhetoric for so long. There's a fear that if I slow down and I can just sit there for a while, I'm going to be behind, right? I'm giving up productivity to just be.
100%. And I think with the productivity and just being, more is not always more. People think that doing more, working more, adding more creates more results. And I'm not sure if you've heard of this quote, but it's like you get 80% of the results doing 20% of the work, anyways. The extra pushing they're listening is probably not moving the needle how much you think it is. And notice where it's operating from force, from pressure, from shoulds, from obligation. Like, oh, I need to be this because I believe if I don't do this, I won't be successful or I won't make it or I won't do this. Like, well, that's not an expansive frequency to me. It's not like, oh, I really want to learn how to code a website. And that feels expansive and exciting. Like to me, that's interesting. So I will spend extra time doing that because it's coming from a place of fullness, wholeness, and completeness, not I'm somehow lacking, incomplete, less than whole. So let me chase and do more because doing is going to try to fill that hole or give me the illusion that I am somehow now enough, whole, or complete.
Okay, that is helpful because it's hard to decide like what are we doing with our time, right? Maybe this is a good time to get into your rich and regulated framework because I love that you have that title. If it was just like calm and regulated, I would be like, no, I don't want to be calm. Rich and regulated, that makes me feel like I'm going to be prosperous. And rich can mean so many things, right? Everybody listening has different goals. Like, what is rich? It's time richness, money richness, like social relationships, social health, wealth, physical health. Like there's so many ways we can feel rich in this world. And I want to be considering all of that because I think it's all related to this. But the idea of being accomplished, I guess, like accumulating those things and being regulated simultaneously, I feel like I don't know how to do that. Like, how do you combine those worlds?
And yeah, like what you said, when I say rich and regulated, I truly mean rich in every sense of the word. Like, yes, your bank account to give you like the freedom to do whatever you want to do and live how you ever want to live, but it's also the aliveness and the relationships and the health and, you know, how you feel within yourself and the fulfillment and the love and the bliss. Like, to me, it's truly all the things and giving someone the freedom for whatever the richness looks like to them. But the biggest key in order to have that, yes, it's becoming regulated, but it's also expanding your capacity. So we talked about like the window of tolerance. Most people's window of tolerance, itty bitty. It's so small. So what they can actually be regulated to in order to receive is very small. It's your window of tolerance. That's not just your nervous system in terms of how it responds, but it's also what you can receive. So receive in terms of money, wealth, health, love, all the things. And it's so often, people think, oh, you can't have it all. Well, if money is good, your relationship must be shit. Or if love is going good, then that means like your business has to tank and all of these things. That means your window of tolerance is very small. So in order to be rich and regulated, we actually need to expand your nervous system by expanding that window of tolerance so that you can hold more, that it doesn't feel like holding. It doesn't feel like effort, right? It's like if you were to pick up a 1 pound weight, you probably wouldn't really notice, but it might feel heavy at first. So we kind of like train or expand your system to be able to hold more without it feeling like folding. And that is how you become the woman who can have it all, hold it all, receive it all.
This is amazing. Just like side note from me to you. Oh my gosh. There's so much power in this work. I love this idea of expansion because I guess these things are resonating with me because I want this in my personal life, right? Obviously, like I need help. And yeah, I saw a quote, two quotes recently that resonated. Like one said, you don't have to be the one to do it all, but you have to be the one to hold it all. And that was kind of from a leadership perspective. And then I also saw something that said, like, true growth is holding the next level of success without self-sabotage. And that really struck me because I think we invest so much time, like back to this idea of productivity and achievement. We spend a lot of time thinking about our goals and the stuff that we want, like vision board exercises, manifesting, planning, like strategic goal setting professionally and personally, New Year's resolutions. There's a lot of rhetoric out there around like get really clear on what you want. And then we get really frustrated when we're not getting it or it's taking longer than we want it to, but it sounds like that is a symptom, like, that's a reality that's happening because we're actually not ready, even though logically we think we are, like, we're like, "No, no, no, like, send me my dream husband now. Send me $1,000,000 now. I swear I can take it." But it's like that disconnect between our intellectual mind and our physical self.
Well, it's that subconscious mind, right? Consciously, you're like, yeah, I would have $1 million and the love of my life and fly around the world and do all these things. But subconsciously, your nervous system has all these beliefs of, well, like, what is more money going to mean? How is that going to change my relationships? How are people going to perceive me? What kind of responsibility comes with managing that kind of money? All of these things that dictate your capacity. And like we said in the beginning of this episode, it's a primal response. So it doesn't matter. Consciously, like, yeah, I want it. The subconscious is like, no, that'd be dangerous. Our marriage might fall to pieces if we start making, more than our husbands, and how would they perceive us? That's a big one for women. It could be how our family member is going to react. Will I still be liked? Will I still fit in? As a woman, we are very tribal, community based. If you believe you're going to be outed of the tribe if you make a lot of money, well, then your nervous system is not going to allow the money in, because primally you value community and tribe. That will always trump what you consciously want. So this is what I mean by like that primal response is so important because it overrides everything. And so when we talk about expanding your system, I always give the analogy of like maybe you're a size tall at a Starbucks right now. So you can only take so much in your cup. So even if more were to come in, more money, more love, more opportunities, more impact, more visibility, if that cup overflows, even if it's good things, your nervous system is going to be like danger. It's going to go on alert. It's going to be like, no, we are at capacity. We are tapped. When you expand it to a venti, all of that can come in because you have more space. And when you do that preventatively, and you do that before your nervous system is dysregulated, you expand your capacity to hold more. That's when you start to expand at a rapid pace. That's when you have no limits. It's because the container just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's so much room for more to pour in, you don't even feel it. And you don't have all of these subconscious things saying, you're in danger, you'll be outcasted, no one's going to love you, so and so is going to leave you, they're going to hate you. And all those things could happen. It's not like those things may or may not happen. They may, but it's about your system no longer is afraid of those things happening.
Okay, I know part of this is the magic of working with you, and this is what you support people with all the time. But for everyone listening who's like, "Oh, crap, like I'm such a tall and I want to go to a venti." Like I know that I'm like at capacity and yeah, there's probably some subconscious stuff in there and like some things are coming to mind, but there's also probably some stuff that, I don't see, right? Like I think sometimes we just can't see it. Like if you say, "Are you ready for the love of your life?" and the person's like, "Yes, of course. I've been dating, I'm doing everything to try to find him." Like sometimes it's hard for us to be in touch with what are those things that we're actually worried about happening if we get this thing that we desire. So, for those of us listening, what can we do to start to expand, to go from that tall to a venti?
Well, first, I would actually focus on emptying within the tall. I know people think of like, oh, filling your cup in a positive quote unquote lens. I'm using it from the fact of when your nervous system is at capacity, it's too full, it overflows. Instead of focusing on the tall is full, how do I create a little bit more room in the venti? Why don't we empty what's in the tall and then expand, right? So if we empty what's making you at capacity now, you'll get a lot of capacity much faster, and then when you expand to a venti, you have all 20 ounces versus a full tall to the venti. What is that? Maybe like 5 or 6 ounce difference, right? Like in terms of math, you have so much more. So in terms of what's filling your tall, it's like, all right, what is making you at capacity right now? What in your life, personally, professionally, is driving you at capacity, and looking at those things and solving those holes so that you have a lot more space in your nervous system.
Okay, I'm thinking of examples for myself, like things that push us to capacity. What if there are things that it feels like you can't eliminate? Like, let's say you have a toxic relationship with a boss, but you're not going to leave that job, or something that it feels like, this is the thing that's causing me overwhelm or like pushing my nervous system to the brink, but it doesn't feel like something I can walk away from. Then what do we do?
I'm gonna really like call everything forward in what you just said, because I'm like, oh, there's so much I have to say. So that's an absolute. Let's use that toxic work example. You may not be able to leave the job, but you can set boundaries with the boss. You can definitely stand up for yourself. You can change your reaction in terms of, are you making things personal? Right? Is this toxic boss like saying things, but that's how they are with everyone, but you're taking it as like your job performance or making it mean something about you, right? So you can change the meaning. So in all situations, there is something you can do, even if it's not this extreme of I can't quit my job tomorrow. It's like, well, what boundaries have you set? Have you stood up for yourself? Have you changed your communication with them? Depending on the situation, there's so many nuances that you actually could change that would relieve the pressure.
I like what you said about changing what it means, because that feels like something that is truly internal. Like even if I can't control, and we can't control, like control is such a illusion. If we can't control what other people are going to say to us or how they're going to react to us when we, are out there living our lives, interacting with people, we can change what it means to us and like how much weight that holds.
because you always have control over your reactivity or non-reactivity. And so that example honestly reminds me of like the clients I work with that have agencies and they're working with clients who are very dysregulated or demanding or just plain rude. And we work on, from their perspective, holding that boundary and that line in terms of, okay, well, I'm not available during these hours. If someone's saying like, I don't know, 4:55 on Friday and you're ending at 5, it's like, well, we need you to do this. It's like, well, no, like this is a time frame. Like, it's also having boundaries around that versus, going into that urgency and matching their dysregulation or their reactivity with yours. It's like, oh, can I have the boundaries of, well, these are my work hours, right? These are the hours I work. I don't work on weekends. I don't take calls on this time. Or, there's whatever needs to be set in place in order for that to happen. Instead of putting the focus on somebody else and it's like, well, they're toxic, they're bad, they're wrong. It's like, all right, can we take responsibility for how we are responding? Perhaps we need more standards. Perhaps we need more boundaries. Perhaps we do need to stand up for ourselves. Perhaps that toxic person is speaking to us in that way because we haven't had a standard of how we want to be communicated with.
That makes me think that sometimes the standards we need to set are even within ourselves. Like, what you just said is such a great example of how we can deal with, other people and the way that we interact. But sometimes it's sort of you against you. And, you're the one, or I'll say me, like I'm the one who says, like, oh, I'm at capacity. And then I take on another client. Or I say, oh, I know that I feel amazing when I get up in the morning and I walk to the gym and then I skip it because I'm sort of breaking my own boundaries with myself. Like, does that come up a lot with your clients?
All the time, like a standard work is probably a lot and feeling safe in those standards, right? Because the reason you don't set the boundaries, you don't set the standards is probably because you think you're going to upset someone, you're worried about pissing someone off, you're worried about, I don't know, not liking you, or you're worried about their reaction. Like there's underlying fears behind why you're not setting those standards, but so much of it is what you just said, both like in examples like the gym, examples with clients, examples with like whoever you have to deal with in your work situation, bosses, people above you, below you, doesn't matter. It's so much of that. And you don't realize how much all these little things start to fill that tall cup, right? And so when you stop doing these things, your capacity just grows and grows and grows because you're no longer constantly filling it with these boundaries that actually you have complete control over and the standards that you have complete control over. And then this is where people get into blame where like, it's my mom's fault, it's my sister's fault, it's their fault. I'm like, if you set the boundary and you didn't hold it, it's your fault. With so much love, I'm sorry, it's your fault. Let's unpack why you didn't feel safe to hold it, but like, let's also take responsibility of you actually have so much more power. And so this is not like a conversation to shame anyone. This is for me to empower you that, oh, you actually have so much more power than I think you realize or you're giving yourself credit for.
That feels clear to me. Like when I think about the tall cup and I'm like, okay, start emptying the cup instead of just thinking like more is more is more is more, right? It's like if your closet is overstuffed with a bunch of stuff you never wear and you're like, well, I need a bigger closet. No, like go through the closet, get rid of the stuff that doesn't fit, that doesn't make you feel good, right? Start there. And then when I think about all those little micro moments, like me breaking boundaries or changing standards or acquiescing or whatever with myself primarily, or maybe sometimes with other people too, partners, friends, all of it, it's like realizing that's the stuff that fills the cup, right? Because if we think about emptying it, it's like, okay, well, what's in there? Like it's all those little things that trigger us. Is that right? Am I understanding this right?
100%. I also love the closet analogy. It's another really great analogy.
Well, I've been focused on my closet lately, so that's helpful for me. We're focused on intention, as you know, intentionality. Intentional living is such a big theme of this podcast. And sometimes I think like we have the best of intentions and we want to feel spacious and we want to feel regulated and, be able to just sit in the morning with a cup of coffee and not like freaking out about all these things, but it's the how. Like the how is the hard part. So, okay, a big takeaway for me is thinking, where am I breaking boundaries with myself and where can I set stronger boundaries with other people, realizing that this is a positive thing. This is an empowerment thing, not like a restrictive thing.
100%. Exactly.
Do you feel like once somebody kind of gets the hang of this. Like your clients, when you work with people and they start to understand these concepts and are able to empty out their tall cup, and I'm just going to keep going with that because it is clear to me, empty that out and then, graduate on, like expand and expand. You've said that sometimes what holds us back from that is this fear of how we're going to be perceived by other people. Do you feel like actually when you are regulated and you do protect that stuff for yourself, you're more magnetic to people?
You're more magnetic to the right people. So there's like the duality. Like if we think even about celebrities, right? Let's use Taylor Swift. I'm not a huge Swiftie fan, but there are people who are like diehard like Taylor Swift, ride or die, like will come after you if you said anything about Taylor Swift. And on the opposite side, there are people who like have such hate for her and trolls. Like it's really the duality of both. So you become more magnetic to the right people, but you also will trigger and really not be for the people you're not for. So like and you have to be willing to have, and this is what I mean by holding it all. Oh, you want the praise, the validation, the recognition, all that. Can you hold both? So you can't have one side of the stick and not the other.
That's really interesting. Not that we should be doing this in service of other people necessarily, but it's part of our human nature, right? To think about that, I think, to an extent. And I feel like when I witness somebody, I've never thought like, ooh, that woman over there looks like her nervous system is super regulated. Like I haven't put it in those terms. But when I witness somebody who feels really in their power and, they do set boundaries and standards, it makes me want to rise to the occasion. And then the next level is like, I aspire to that. Like, wow, look at you. You're doing all these things and you have time to go on dates with your partner. And as we've said, that quote, have it all. Not that anyone's life is perfect, but I feel very drawn to that, probably because I seek that. I want that. So I think, yeah, it's interesting to think that there are going to be people who love it and get it and are drawn in. And then there's going to be people who are on the other end of the spectrum, and we just have to, like, let that go.
Exactly. I mean, there's always duality, right? Like you can be the juiciest peach, and there'll be someone who doesn't like peaches.
And who cares?
Yeah, because you're just too busy being juicy. It's so regulated, and you're not making that mean anything about you that, like, Karen doesn't like you or Sally, whatever. You're just off living your life. I like to say you become like Teflon. Like, I don't like Teflon in my cookware because it's toxic, but I do like Teflon in my nervous system where things kind of like slide off.
Okay, what is the ongoing progression of this? Like, is the goal to first get to the root and, as you said, pull out the whole weed and get rid of things that are kind of keeping us stuck where we are right now today? Then, like, as we start to expand, how does this work over the course of your life? Like, is there any finish line, or are we just seeking like constant expansion at a sustainable pace?
Basically the second one, and it's not from like a, "Oh, there's always more work to do," but there is always more to expand into, right? And it might be expansion in different ways. You might go through a season of expansion with money, then a season of expansion of just allowing more love and joy in, which sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how many women actually struggle to even let love in and to let joy in and let ease in. And then it's also letting all of that in at once and having it feel a little bit more effortless, a little bit more easy. There's always more expansion. There always will be another level, but it's not from a seeking place. It's from a, I feel so full and whole and complete. Like I'm curious how much more I can experience. How much more can I expand myself and my system to be able to experience more out of life in all the ways? Because there's always more love to experience or things to experience or joy, of course, always more money to make. Like that is always limitless. But there's also maybe different things you're going to get into, right? Maybe you use a speaking example. You've never spoken on a stage before. So you might go through a season of like your edge of your nervous system is speaking in public. All right. So you've gotten to the point you can speak in front of 100 people easily. All right. Let's make that 20,000. Right. So like you can see how there is always another level, but it comes from a place of playfulness and curiosity and desiring more, but not from, "Oh, I need that to make me feel enough or whole or complete or satisfied or fulfilled."
That makes it feel so exciting. It truly is limitless. I know you have a podcast called Beyond Limits, which makes sense, right? Like when I think about my lifespan and however much time I am gifted to have here, I have no idea what that will be, of course. I want to get the most out of it, and not in a way that I want to be just like checking boxes of like, this is what a successful life looks like. I want to be expanding my mind, expanding my impact, my influence, expanding my own joy. As you said, the love that I'm able to give, like my capacity to love others and more and more and more others as people come into my world. And it's really exciting to me to think that doing this work is the catalyst to allowing me to do that. It's not just like, I have to get better at working harder and managing my time to, continue to expand. No, like it can feel like this natural, graceful thing when taking this nervous system approach, and I can keep doing it, kind of keep blossoming, right? It's like the flower gets bigger and bigger and bigger as your life goes on.
And with that, right, the more you expand, also the more impact you can have, the more you can do. So whether like you desire like a global impact and a big thing, and that for you is something where you're forward facing and in the public eye, or it's even just the impact you have on your family, the people you interact with, your loved ones, whatever you desire capacity for, when you live in an expanded state and your system is larger, you actually have more to give. And so for so many women, like they want to be giving, they want to be giving. And so they end up at a nervous system capacity because they have been over giving, they have been people pleasing. And it's like, well, no, when you do this, you have more to give, but it's from overflow. Like you were just living in this constant state of overflow, 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 where it's spilling out of you and it's not at a cost to you, right? You're not burning yourself at the cost of helping someone or being there for someone or supporting someone or the impact you want to have in the world. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you just have more to give. So I also just really believe in it because that we'll all have more to give into the world if we all just expanded in our systems.
This feels like it's backtracking, but you mentioned this, so I have to ask this because I just wonder if this is a societal thing. When you were talking about like letting love in and how it's surprising, like to let in more love and joy, that's a struggle for a lot of women. Is letting ease in a problem for women? Like, do we have a hard time accepting something being easy?
I mean, I think society in general, but especially women have so much trouble letting things be easy. It's like it must be hard. It must be a struggle. And honestly, I just think it comes from, I mean, depending on how you grew up in your families, but a lot of us like mom and dad worked, like they probably worked hard. They programmed into you that work hard, go to school, do this, go, go, go. And then maybe you can enjoy your life when you're 70. Right. So it's very just like programmed, I think, unfortunately, into us as a generation. Ease is something that it almost feels like the guilt and the shame that comes up with ease. So it's not even just like receiving more and experiencing more, it's how easy it feels, especially when it comes to success and money. It's one thing to expand your system to hold more money. Then I always have to work with people of the guilt of like, oh, I didn't realize it could be this easy to make $150,000 in a month. Oh, am I doing something wrong? Am I bad? Especially because we are loving, caring women. So we look at other people and we're like, well, so and so is struggling. How can I make this much money and it be this easy for me? But they're experiencing hardship, or they're a single mom and they're struggling to make ends meet. And so you're right. Like there is this deconditioning that needs to happen that I find really comes back to, well, the easier it is for you, also the more impact you can have with your money in the way you desire to and how you desire to either support people or donate here or whatever you want to do with it. To me, that becomes then a channel of, well, of course, the easier I can do it, the easier I can help other people.
Yeah, if we can see it as the easier it is to get the money, the more energy we have to use the money in the way that we can feel really proud of to sort of counteract that guilt. I like that, but I also totally get it. I don't know, like I think there's something in me where if something's easy, I feel like I'm being lazy. Yet like so many of the examples you said there, I feel like the idea if something comes easy, then you don't really deserve it. Like that just feels so part of us. And imagine what we could accomplish, not just what we could get, but what we could accomplish, like the ripple effect, because we would have the time and energy and capacity if we just allowed that to be. Like if, we just embraced that things coming easy, whatever the topic, that was a good thing and like celebrate that as a win, not like how do I self-sabotage this to make it really hard so that I feel like I earned it?
100%. It's like really such a mass conditioning. And I even think about like the ease in a granular way just to get, something that people can do from this episode to let things be more easy. See if you can play with it in a way that doesn't feel like it's heavy or has strings attached. And what I mean by that is like I'll play tennis and I'll be like, tennis is so easy. I believe tennis is so easy. I will play better tennis when I believe that tennis is easy versus like, oh, okay, I'm not that great at tennis. Like this is gonna be hard. It's always easier. When I'm skiing, I'm like, if I believe this run is gonna be easy, I'm like, this is gonna be easy. We're gonna free flow it. It's going to be easy. Right? So if it feels sticky to do that, maybe with money or with work, see if you can start to play with ease and I don't know, finding a parking spot. Can you play with ease and just like, I don't know, some sort of travel that you're doing and navigating there, some sort of new skill that you're learning? Where can you try to like bring more of that ease into your life in ways that you don't feel like you have to fight against? Like there isn't that friction in your system saying like, no, you have to push. There probably are ways you can find, and then that will just naturally bring more ease into your system.
That's a great tactical example because that's what I was going to ask next. Like, what do we do? Probably a lot of people listening are like, yeah, I am uncomfortable with ease. Maybe there are things I'm making harder than I need to, and I don't want to be doing that anymore. So that's super helpful. I like the idea of playing with ease and things that are easy, or there's no kind of connection to our self worth, like finding a parking space or, going for a walk. Like walking after work is so easy.
You might feel attached on like finding a partner. So you might be like, oh, finding the man of my dreams is easy. If you have a lot of attachment to that, it's not going to stick. But getting ready for the date might be really easy. Looking hot as hell might be easy, right? Like that's something you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. Like that's easy.
Okay, what else for those listening who they're like, okay, I know I have some work to do on this. And of course, like, I want you to share all the places where you are at the end of this conversation so we can connect with you directly. But what is something like this weekend that people listening can try to embrace? I really like that finding ease. I'm going to do that. Let's all do that. What is something else that's kind of a good first step to just embracing this idea of nervous system regulation?
Okay, I really like what we talked already about the tall cup. So I'm gonna bring a last like a new little thing in there. Can you start to challenge where you've created limitations in your life? And just start to get curious and ask why. Right? Oh, I have to go to this family event. Why? In the nervous system example, maybe you're at capacity, you're tired, you don't have to go. Why do you have to go? Right? Is it guilt, shame, whatever? Oh, the business has to look like this. Why? I have to do it this way. Why? Like get curious and you'll start to really see where you've placed limitations on yourself that are making your cup smaller. And again, with just curiosity, with discovery, like why? And you start to challenge that, you will be shocked at how you're unconsciously operating in this smaller structure, right? In this smaller cup, in this tall, by placing these limitations that only exist because you believe that they must.
I can't wait to do that.
I love doing this with my class. Like, but I have to do this. I'm like, why? Well, because I have to. According to whom? In the beginning, you were asking, like, oh, how do we become aware of these things? This will also, circling back to the beginning of the episode, help you do that because you're going to start to challenge where all these beliefs kind of came from.
Those societal norms run so deep within us. Like it is amazing. And I love like just asking why with curiosity because we don't know they're there. Like most of the time it's just yeah, I have to do this. I have to get up early and do this. I have to go to bed at this time. I have like so many micro things in our daily routine and major things. That's obviously a huge purpose of this podcast to kind of hit pause and think, okay, with the decision to have children, do we want it? Do we have to do it? Like, where is the conditioning here? And where is our intuition and our authentic voice and the life that we really want to live? So much conversation here about rewriting the narrative that we have inherited and really thinking intentionally about what is going to be right for us. So, as a final question to you, working with all the people that you have worked with and kind of seeing where people get stuck and where they get challenged. And I know your mission to help us move through all of this and really embrace our own individual expansion. What is one societal expectation that you would love to help women let go of?
Nothing is normal. Let go of what you deem normal. Because normalization is really just a byproduct of who you surround yourself with. For you, it might be normal to make, I don't know, 100K a year. You think that's normal. And then you get woken up to the fact that, like, oh, your new normal could be a 500 or a million or 10 million or whatever it is. Oh, it's normal to feel tired all the time. It's normal to feel, I don't know, bloated all the time. It's normal to be in a loveless marriage. It's normal to have children. Like, challenge the normal. Redefine like what's normal. There's no such thing as normal. It is only what you choose to normalize for yourself.
Powerful. No more normal. Let's get weird.
Who wants normal? I'm not here for normal. I want extraordinary. I want like effervescent. I want heart expanding. I want it all. I don't want normal. Not normal. Like, no, no.
Normal is boring.
Normal's boring. And again, like normal's gonna look different to everyone. Or like what you want to normalize. So I'm gonna add in a little caveat, like giving yourself permission on the back end of that for what you want to normalize for yourself. Right. Because that permission piece of normalizing is going to be huge as well.
So powerful. Liv, for everyone listening who is just as obsessed with you as I am and wants to continue to learn from you and connect with you, where is the best place to find you and tell the people what you have going on?
The best place is going to be Instagram. So I'm just at Keep Up with Liv. And I also have my Beyond Limits podcast where I dive into more of all of these things as well. I have so many like riffs on there that are going to be so helpful for everybody. And honestly, I always say just come over to Instagram. You can always send me a DM, let me know what you're going through, what's going on for you, and I can point you in the right direction because there is truly something at every level and something for everyone, depending on where your nervous system is, where you feel kind of capped, what you want to normalize, and then we can always find the best spot for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming and sharing this with us. I hope everybody listening feels like there's something tactical that we can all do together moving forward. I am doing all of this. I'm going to picture my life as a Starbucks cup forever now. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Now I want to hear what you learned. DM me on Instagram at Curious Life of a Child-Free Woman or leave a review with your top takeaway. These ratings really do make a difference. If you're not a member of the Curious Life Club yet, you are invited. Visit CuriousLifeOfAChildFreeWoman.com to join the conversation, share suggestions, and be first to know the next curious topic. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next week.